Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today is a Patreon request from Sybay. I'm talking about the 2015 album from Rival Consoles, Howl. Okay, so Rival Consoles is the alias for Ryan Lee West. He's a regular on the Erase Tapes Records label that I know best for having Niels Fromm on it. This guy's put out quite a few albums. He's had 7 so far, and one of them came out earlier this year. I know Ryan from Not Real Music covered that most recent project, Articulation, not too long ago. He seemed to be pretty into it, if you want to go check out his video. Though I will freely admit, despite having heard plenty of good things about this guy for a while, I'd never actually bothered to check him out myself. I have not heard any of his other albums aside from this one, which I only first heard directly because of this request. I'm sort of going blind here and won't be able to speak on how it fits in his wider back catalog. Which I'm pretty sure is the way that the requester wanted me to digest this anyways. And after hearing it, yeah, this was pretty good. This was pretty good. Is it the most incredible stuff I've ever heard? No, but it's nice. This album style is at once very familiar and resembles several different artists I already know, but doesn't exactly match any one of them. I guess it's like a mix between maybe like the John Hopkins Immunity style and some micro house along the lines of, say, that last Mew Juice album. Also feel like there's some floating points in the mix in there too, especially in the way that acoustic drumming is used on a couple of tracks here. And everything a little more intense and raw sounding than what I've heard of those artists. Maybe more like Against All Logic minus the sampling, I don't know. There are just 9 tracks here, and while they don't exactly build into each other, they do all sort of have a unifying vibe to them. And admittedly, it can be maybe a bit hit and miss. Some moments here were fun, if not super memorable. Some I found myself getting kinda checked out. But a few tracks were straight up excellent. I might have some mixed feelings on it as a whole, but on average, yeah, I think I can qualify it as good. May as well just go down individual tracks. It starts with the title track, sets the tone for what you're getting with the whole album, and it's pretty badass. Bouncing John Hopkins-y house beats that really banged, various layers of wavering synths that come and go, some wailing synth pads that I suppose aim to live up to the album title, pretty hard-hitting bass lines as well, and those freaking arpeggios that blasted in at about the 2.5-minute mark were great. This was an opener that pretty effectively got me hooked in. And most of the rest of the tracks would explore a lot of similar sounds to that opener to varying degrees of success. Well, for instance, I really liked Ghosting, with its stuttering synth loops going over some fairly sparse electronic percussion echoing outwards and lots of other sparkling textures going over on top of it. And, you know, there are some fuzzy pads that come in at some various intervals that sound like a swarm of bees buzzing, which didn't feel like they quite fit into the mix as cleanly as other ones. But there's definitely a lot of progression and interesting stuff going on here, change-ups every couple of bars. It's really well put together, all things considered. Walls was another consistent standout. Those freaking bass stabs that run through much of the track are absolutely monumental in size. They feel like Inception horn blares. They really drive the otherwise simplistic groove forward and create a sense of epicness. Really love the way this one continually builds up. Also, there's even some acoustic drums coming in later, like little drum rolls for extra texture at first, and then later this change up into these off-kilter lumbering beats that are definitely a nice touch. But those acoustic drums are a lot more of a notable element on the track Low. This was the one where the floating points comparisons were the most obviously present. All these shuffling, jazzy drum beats going up against these layers of moody pads and other melodic textures very much reminds me of that guy in the best possible way. And I'll also say I thought Pre was pretty good. The requester tried to tell me that this track was just pure filler to him. I don't think I agree. I do kind of like the more chill and laid back vibe this one creates. That helps it stand out from the crowd, and its looping sets of muted pads actually were kinda catchy in their own way. I don't know if I would call it one of my biggest favorites, though I cannot say I'd want this one outright removed. Though there are other tracks where I wasn't as pulled in, like Afterglow, that has some typically grooving beats to it and some cool sound effects that sound like shoveling gravel or something. Though this didn't really stand out in the mix too much, and a lot of the synth textures didn't feel like they had as much body or weight to them. Certainly cool if I pay attention, but it's one point on here where my attention would just often trail off and I'd start to lose interest. And similar thoughts on Morning Vox. That one just wasn't that memorable to me or did much that other tracks weren't also doing already and better. It's kinda like Pre, but not as good. Also, its lead bass synth stutterings had like a weirdly and downbeat vibe to them that I wasn't really sure if I was into, even if the textures placed on top do their best to counteract that feeling and attempt to turn it into something more uplifting. That one was alright. I also did not really care for the 2-minute sorta interlude 3 Laments. While I'll give it credit for at least standing out in the mix and being pretty easily recognizable, its repetitive melodic licks got kinda annoying pretty quickly, especially when they were getting into more like high-pitched territory. Wasn't really a fan of that one. I suppose the closer Looming was a pretty solid way to finish the project, had some more visceral momentum to mirror the opener. The kind of more minimal sounding Boards of Canada-esque intro was kind of neat, and the way it built up from there was cool with its moaning organ-like synth chords and later thumping bassy rumbling. Plenty of interesting textures throughout this one as well. I didn't find it to be quite as striking or satisfying as the project's biggest highlights. But yeah, that's everything on Howl. Maybe can be a bit of a mixed bag, but it's not bad at all. I wouldn't say any of these textures were super mind-blowing or anything I haven't already heard before plenty of times. I don't think I'd call it like a shining example of the best possible material this genre has to offer, but, you know, nothing was an outright turn-off either. Even the lowest points were mostly just okay and outshined by other tracks here. I can see people who are more invested in these genres finding them a lot more exciting. And the biggest high points I found myself invested enough in to possibly want to come back to even then. It's still a good project all around, it's just not a great one. Like, I'm also willing to believe that Rival Consoles has better projects in him than this. I obviously can't confirm for myself at the moment, because I haven't heard any of the other ones. Though from what I've seen, it's not necessarily his most well-held-up project. For instance, I've heard a lot of good things about his 2018 project Persona. That might be better based on word of mouth. But yeah, Howl by itself, it's a good album. Not amazing, probably not going to hang on to it long term, but I guess I came out feeling like I enjoyed myself, so I guess take that all as you will. I think I'll give this a solid 7 out of 10. But of course, it's just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave the comments in the comment thing down there. Shout out to my Patreon supporters, they're awesome people. You want to add yourself to that list or make me review something, link to my Patreon is in the description. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.